This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
This morning, Israel closed the 3 commercial crossings along the Gaza Strip for the 7th time in 3 months. The importation and transportation of food and goods has stopped, increasing the attempts to make life difficult for residents in the Strip.
This comes in accordance with a decision made by the Israeli Prime Minister of Defense, Ehud Barak, to close them. This came after a Palestinian rocket landed in Sderot, north of the Gaza Strip, without causing any injuries.
In
the past 3 months and nearly since the start of the cooling off agreement, Israel closed the commercial crossings to the Gaza Strip for the 7th time, using the Palestinian rocket landing in Israel as justification. The Sofa crossing, which specializes in transporting goods and food supplies to the Strip, closed its gates in the face of Palestinian trucks. Nothing remains in this place except some pedestrians who are among the residents of this area and trucks transporting trash cans. Similarly, the crossing near Oza, which specializes in providing oil to the Strip, has stopped functioning on both sides. Meanwhile, the Mantar commercial crossing was empty of all activity by the workers and employees. Officials from the Ministry of National Economy of the ousted government expressed their concern over the Israeli decision and confirmed that they were irritated by Israel's lack of commitment to provide all the necessities of the Strip.
There is real concern and irritation about the quantities that are allowed to enter the Gaza Strip. We are certain that these quantities only satisfy 8 to 10% of consumption of the residents of the Gaza Strip.
The closing of the commercial crossings have a negative effect on the life of citizens on Gaza's streets, especially during this blessed month of Ramadan. This forces traders to look for alternatives like buying smuggled goods in tunnels along the Egyptian-Palestinian borders. Thus, the prices rise for the Palestinian citizens who are the victims of this reality.
Whatever we have, we sell. Then, as the stores emptied out, we started buying in the tunnels to get by. The streets are empty, but there are no customers. People are tired.
There are no products. We don't even have the most basic necessities in the market. Prices have gone up by 50%. We hold the occupation and the politicians amidst the current differences responsible for the situation. The people are the only ones being hurt.
Palestinians view Israel's closing of the commercial crossings with the Gaza Strip as a new violation of the cooling off agreement. Israelis view it as punishment aimed at stopping the launching of Palestinian rockets on cities and positions along the Gaza border. This situation increases the suffering of the residents and makes it harder for them to make a living. Samir Abu Shammala, Al Jazeera, Gaza, Palestine.
With us from the Sofa crossing, our correspondent Tamer Al-Mazhal.
And with us from the Mintar crossing, our correspondent, Wael Al-Dahtuh.
We will start with you, Tamer. You are now at the Sofa crossing, designated for transport of goods. How does the movement appear, or is there no movement at all?
لا حركة على الإطلاق، والصورة أصدق من التعبير. الشارع المؤدي إلى معبر صوف الذي يقع بخلفي وهو الواقع بأقصى جنوب قطاع غزة خالي منذ ساعات الصباح.
There's absolutely no movement. Pictures speak louder than words. The street leading to the Sofa crossing, which is located behind me in the most southern part of the Gaza Strip, is empty. It has been empty from the early morning hours. Not even lines for Palestinian trucks, which have gotten used to parking in long lines to wait for the passing through of goods, are here. This crossing, the Sofa crossing, is designated for the transport of food goods and supplies, as well as frozen foods and some raw materials, which Israel may allow to pass through. It has been rare for Israel to allow these materials to enter in the past, particularly during the cooling off period, when it stated that it would allow the passing through of these materials in accordance to the agreement. The Gaza Strip needs these materials and has been denied them for many months. The situation for the Sofa crossing is the same as the Karm Abu Salam crossing, which is near Sofa and located east of the Rafah crossing in the southern Gaza Strip, and which was closed by the Israelis under the pretext of the launching of a Palestinian rocket last night, which caused no injuries.
فرق إن فتح وإن لم يفتح، لأن إسرائيل لا تسمح بدخول العدد الكافي. إسرائيل تسمح من هذا المعبر تحديدا بدخول ما يقرب من 80 شاحنة يوميا مواد غذائية.
There are no trucks present. In reality, the Palestinian citizens, who came to us when we were the only ones in the area early this morning, said that it makes no difference whether the crossing is opened or closed because Israel does not allow enough goods to enter. Israel allows nearly 80 trucks to pass through per day, which are carrying basic food goods. This is not sufficient for the needs of the residents of the densely populated Gaza Strip, who mainly rely on these commercial crossings. There is another equation. The trucks, if they are allowed to enter the periphery of the crossing and to park, they must wait many hours to deliver the food goods, which are unloaded from the Israeli trucks inside the crossing. Imagine, if only milk was allowed to enter, it would be unloaded for many hours under the heat of the sun. So the milk becomes spoiled and soured, which has happened many times, in which some merchants told us about. The second important point, which some citizens told us about, was that Israel imposes a buffer zone around these commercial crossings. It does not allow Palestinian farmers to go out to work on their land. This has caused suffering for many sectors. In a gesture of solidarity, just 2 hours ago, many foreigners who remained in the Gaza Strip after coming on 2 ships to break the siege on Gaza not long ago, came to the nearby Fukari neighborhood east of Rafah. There they planted various olive and lemon trees in the area surrounding the commercial crossings and the buffer zone. So this crossing is closed, as are other crossings. The Palestinians are throwing the ball in the Israelis' court, holding it responsible for the consequences of closing down these crossings.
Prime Minister Olmert will meet in Jerusalem tomorrow with PA President Mahmoud Abbas. At the meeting, set to take place just 1 day before the Kadima primaries, the two leaders will discuss the ongoing peace negotiations and the Palestinian demand for the release of additional Palestinian security prisoners. This morning, Olmert briefed the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee about the peace talks. IBA's Dennis Zen reports.
Each day that goes by without reaching an agreement with the Palestinians is a day we will regret. This, according to Prime Minister Olmert this morning, in what was probably his last briefing to the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee before he resigns. Olmert told the committee members that as a result of the ongoing negotiations with the Palestinians, for the first time it will become clear where the borders of the future Palestinian state will be, and concurrently, Israel will have defined borders that will be recognized by the international community. Olmert said that a condition for any Israeli withdrawal will be a complete cessation of terror. He emphasized that Israel will under no circumstances agree to the right of return for Palestinian refugees, although he reportedly said Israel is ready to express sorrow for the plight of the refugees. Regarding the indirect negotiations with Syria, the Prime Minister said, it's clear that to reach a peace agreement, Israel will have to make difficult concessions. And at the end of the day, he added, Israelis will have to ask themselves if peace with Syria is worth the price. He stressed that unlike his predecessors, he has not yielded anything in the talks. Dennis Zinn, IBA News.
The Counter-Terrorism Bureau has issued an unusually stiff travel advisory to Israelis wanting to visit the Sinai. Israelis are warned in the strongest terms to stay away from that region as well as other areas in Egypt. Those already on Egyptian soil are advised to leave without delay. The advisory reportedly comes following intelligence that terrorists have plans to carry out attacks and to kidnap Israelis.
Six makeshift bombs exploded today in western Beirut, causing property damage and further elevating the security concern, which has been fragile following last week's assassination. Meanwhile, preparations are underway to hold the next round of national dialogue, with the first session focusing on increasing the level of participation and agreeing on all articles of the dialogue. Ilian Chatri reports from Beirut.
To the Republican Palace, March. The Independence Hall, which includes the new rectangular bargaining table, is waiting for Lebanon's negotiators to arrive, with the presidential chair of Michel Suleiman at its head, and the remaining 15 seats are reserved for the 14 political leaders who signed the Doha Agreement and the Secretary General of the Arab League, Amir Moussa. The preparations for the national dialogue were overshadowed by a wave of security unrest following last week's assassination of Saleh Haredi, a senior leader in the Lebanese Democratic Party. On the eve of the National Reconciliation Dialogue, 6 sporadic bombs exploded in the area of Corniche al-Mazra'a, west of the Lebanese capital of Beirut.
The conflict is deepening between those leading the efforts of national reconciliation and consensus aimed at breaking the 2-year political deadlock and those trying to keep the wound open and bleeding. Hence, the possibility of having an explosive situation is there.
Amidst calls by one political team or another for increasing the number of political participants and agreeing on the articles of the National Reconciliation Dialogue, President Michel Suleiman was able to throw the ball in the court of the two rival teams.
God willing, the dialogue will produce a positive outcome for the sake of the nation.
The dialogue is a winning deal.
The preparations to launch the dialogue in Ba'abda in a session that was described as breaking the ice are continuing at all levels amidst cautious optimism and a dim hope of bearing fruits. The first conference was held in 2006 at the headquarters of the Lebanese parliament, and the second conference in 2008 will be held at the presidential palace. Will the second dialogue complete what the first one began?
Our top story, the International Atomic Energy Agency once again verifies the non-diversion of Iran's nuclear program, despite the positive points in the new report. The White House has renewed its warnings about imposing fresh sanctions on Iran over its nuclear program.
The report published by the International Atomic Energy Agency on September 15th reaffirms the peaceful nature of Iran's nuclear program. It says Iran has provided the IAEA with access to nuclear material and activities.
I can say if 10 more years you will have the report of the IAEA continuously, the message is the same. And all the activities are remained for peaceful activities and exclusively for peaceful purposes.
The report emphasizes all uranium enrichment activities in Isfahan and Natanz facilities are being supervised by the agency. It mentions 17 surprise visits by the IAEA inspectors to an enrichment plant at Natanz since March 2007. They did not find any evidence of reprocessing activities there. Western propaganda about Iran's nuclear program intensified before the report was released. London-based Daily Telegraph claims tons of enriched uranium have disappeared from an Iranian nuclear facility in Isfahan. The IAEA was quick to respond. Spokeswoman Melissa Fleming denied the report, saying all nuclear materials at the uranium conversion facility in Isfahan remain under the agency's surveillance. Despite the West's allegations, the agency now says it has found no information about any study or activity that show Iran is building nuclear weapons. This after the agency had earlier said all 6 remaining issues about Iran's nuclear program were resolved.
Regarding the matter called the so-called alleged studies, we have to inform the fact that we in fact agreed with the IAEA in last August a modality called work plan, so that within that work plan both sides clearly know their obligations. agency was obliged to deliver the documents, but the Americans prevented them to do so. However, after the presentation in PowerPoint presentation, Iran, in 117 pages, gave its response and its assessment, and proving that all these allegations are baseless and forged.
The IAEA Board of Governors is expected to discuss the new report next week. The U.S. and its allies are pressuring the IAEA to move beyond its legal and technical commitments. Iran continues to cooperate with the agency within the framework of the safeguards agreements. It hopes the agency would make legal and technical decisions so that its reputation as a credible international body is not tarnished.
أهلا بكم مجددا. نفى الجيش الباكستاني منع مروحيات حربية تابعة للتحالف الدولي.
The Army of Pakistan denied prohibiting combat aircrafts of the U.S.-led international coalition from carrying out a strike on the tribal areas. This came after both the President of Pakistan, Asif Zardari, and his Prime Minister, Yusuf Gilani, vowed to defend the country from U.S. missiles and incursions.
There's been a rise in civilian deaths and injuries in Pakistan due to airstrikes and missile attacks accredited to U.S. troops. This might have been the reason behind the calls of President Asif Ali Zardari and Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani to protect Pakistani soil from any U.S. attack or incursion. In the most recent application of the President's call, the Pakistani Army fired warning bullets to block U.S.-led international coalition aircraft from striking the tribal areas. A few days earlier, the Pakistani Army chief warned that the army will defend the country against any attack. This came after a recent attack by the international coalition forces, which killed civilians. Islamabad has accused the international coalition working under NATO's umbrella of striking a tribal area north of Waziristan, which led to civilian deaths and injuries. Within only 1 week, the number of casualties amongst the civilians in those areas rose to about 38 people. They were concentrated in the tribal areas adjacent to Afghanistan. Washington considers the tribal areas in the region of Waziristan in northeastern Pakistan as a haven for Al-Qaeda and Afghanistan's Taliban militants who are backed by the civilians in that area. The U.S. also thinks that the leader of Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, and his assistant, al-Zawahiri, are hiding in that area. So, is this an attempt to win people's support of the new president? Or is it an attempt to brighten the image of the U.S.-Pakistan coalition in their war against terror, since the two sides are still cooperating and strategically coordinating? Safa Thahi, Al-Arabiya. Al-Arabiya.
أخفق النواب المؤيدون للانقلاب في موريتانيا وللمرة الثالثة في الطوارئ.
Parliament members in support of the coup in Mauritania failed for the third time in resolving the current political crisis. The main point of contention concerned the participation of military personnel in the upcoming presidential elections. Independent parliamentarians approved military participation, while supporters of opposition leader Ahmed Wuldad rejected it.
The roadmap for the transition phase in Mauritania has not yet seen the light. The document was supposed to be discussed during this parliament session, but it was postponed due to serious disagreement between the parliament members. The fundamental point of contention occurred between independent parliamentarians and others from the opposition party of Ahmed Wuldad. They disagreed on the issue of military participation in the upcoming presidential elections.
We said that the law should allow any Mauritanian to run who was serving in the military, but resigned to run for the elections, even if he resigned yesterday or today.
The coalition party is the strongest opposition party. Its parliamentarians insisted on prohibiting anyone who served in the military before August 6th. which was the date of the latest military coup, from running for the upcoming presidential elections. The aim is to prevent military coups in the future, but the two sides apparently arrived at a deadlock.
We reached a deadlock in our discussions. The disagreement was about the government High Council's insistence to not allow any member in the military up until August 6 from running in the elections. This was the main point of contention, after which there was estrangement.
The debate about drawing a general political plan for the future comes amidst unprecedented crisis in Mauritania. The crisis is exacerbated by the rigidity of the opposition inside and the refusal of partners on the outside. The disagreement on whether to allow military personnel to run for the presidential seat is viewed by those who opposed the coup in Mauritania as the beginning of the breakdown in the contract between the leader of the opposition, Ahmed Wildad, and the new leaders of Mauritania. Meanwhile, others regard this as a healthy phenomenon, as long as the disagreement does not spoil the amiability. Mohamed Abdullah Mimi, Al-Alam, Nouakchott.
Poverty has forced children, women, and young men to spend their days in landfills, searching for something to eat or to give their family, despite the health hazards. Ali Al-Khalidi reports.
Unemployment, ignorance, and poverty have forced some Iraqis to gather every day in landfills, looking for food between the garbage in the Al-Bayya area in Baghdad. It is one of the places where Iraqi children, women, and young men can get sick for free. The people know about the numerous diseases in the landfill, but that still does not stop them from looking for food here.
We have been inflicted with many diseases. We have no other choice because we are hungry. We are fighting over a piece of bread. What can we do? I swear to God, we are hungry and we do not know what to do. We were displaced and now we are hungry. We are forced to look for food in the garbage. What has the government done for us?
Environmental awareness can be taught in schools, but unemployment, ignorance, and poverty have forced students to leave their schools. Some have decided to spend the day at the landfills rather than in school.
I'm 6 years old.
Do you come here?
Yes.
Have you registered for school?
I registered, but then I quit school.
Why did you drop out?
I quit school because I went to live off the landfills.
The health ministry and Baghdad's officials are not doing anything. One child may pick up a can of Pepsi in his left hand and lick his right hand, hoping that God will heal it.
I've gotten sick because of the garbage. I do not like to go out there at night because I'm afraid.
Why don't you look for other things to do?
There's nothing out there. What can we do?
People do not only get sick because they have to inhale poisonous substances. They are also exposed to human drugs and eat expired food in cans. They even eat the food that they find between the garbage.
It has become a habit for them. They will not change no matter how aware they become. I'm positive. They drink from Pepsi cans and eat expired sweets. The government should not let this happen to citizens. It's a crime to let these poor people live like this. The country is in a poor condition.
نداء واضح وصريح من العاملين المتضررين ومن يتفرج عليهم موجه صوب الجهات المختصة.
It is clear that calls need to be made from the people who work here to the Iraqi officials to take strict measures so that Iraqi citizens do not lose their lives due to the neglect by the government. This area is only a few kilometers away from Baghdad. It is very strange to see Iraqis look for food between the garbage.
عراقيون يبحثون عن أرزاقهم بين الأنقاض.
They live long hours between the garbage despite the health hazards. Ali Al-Khalidi, Alsumaria, from the Al-Bayya area, Baghdad.
More than half of the world's population now live in cities. But in Morocco, there's a growing number of farmers along the coast of Rabat who are refusing to give in to that trend. Rosie Garthwaite has more.
A farmer all his life, this 80-year-old wants nothing more than for his sons to inherit his small patch of Moroccan land. But now the 20 members of his family can no longer be certain that's going to happen. He's one of thousands of farmers who may be forced to make way for this, a massive modernisation project on the edge of the city of Rabat. If approved by the government, the farmers will be offered compensation for the thousands of hectares needed to build the new corniche. But they don't want to move.
I will not sell my land. This is where my sons and I live. Our land will not be sold.
This land used to be a lake. It was a cheap source of water for the farmers' livestock, but it disappeared with the arrival of the land developers. The Abu Rakak River Rehabilitation Project aims to bring tourists to the capital's Atlantic coast. It's a $30 billion project, but these farmers don't want to see any of that money.
This is our land, and we will not abandon it.
We do not have another place to go. This is our land. A person defends his children and his land.
The government has the right to evict the farmers by force if they refuse to leave. But with 10,000 farmers opposing the move, they say they'll protest to the end.
If there is a public interest, it should be clearly stated and defined. But if the project is about building towers and villas, this is not a public interest. This is an illegal seizure of land, and it should stop immediately.
This isn't the first time Moroccan farmers have protested against the forced expropriation of their land. Others have fought and lost. But for these Moroccans, fighting for their way of life is worth opening up a new front in the battle against urbanisation. Rosie Garthwaite, Al Jazeera.
I'm Amy Goodman, host of Democracy Now!, here to ask you for support for Mosaic, world news from the Middle East. You know, in media news, a new study shows that corporate news coverage of the Iraq War has dropped sharply in the last 4 months. According to the Project for Excellence in Journalism, the Iraq War accounted for just 15% of news coverage, 19% of the network evening newscasts. We need more coverage of the Middle East, not less. We are talking right now about living in a time of war, and it is up to us in a democratic society to decide what to do about that. Mosaic provides information from the Middle East, from countries in the Middle East, from a Middle Eastern perspective. It is invaluable. And right now they need $200,000 to continue their work, to continue their coverage, to bring you their fall lineup of this essential program. The number to call to make your pledge is 866-485-8848. That's 866-485-8848. You can also pledge online at linktv.org. Please pledge as much as you can. Information is power. When you have information, you are empowered to do something about it. That's what Mosaic provides. Again, they're trying to raise $200,000. In order to do this, you can be a small or large part of that. Pledge 25, pledge 50, pledge 200, pledge 500. Mosaic needs you. If you've needed Mosaic for information, now they're asking you to help them reach their goal. That number again is 866-485-8848. That's 866-485-8848. Make your pledge, make it now. You can also pledge online at linktv.org. That number is the lifeline for Mosaic, 866-485-8848. Make the call that makes the difference. This is viewer-sponsored media. You are the engine of this program. Mosaic provides a unique perspective from many different countries in the Middle East. Please give your support to independent media, 866-485-8848. And thanks so much.
Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/Mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.